Welcome to the Mike Stone Show podcast conversation. Mike's guest today is the multi-talented artist, Michael Kelly Blanchard. Michael is someone whose music and storytelling have quietly and powerfully impacted countless lives. With a gift for blending faith, humor, and honesty, Michael's songs and stories remind us of grace, redemption, and the beauty of everyday moments. Michael has a unique way of connecting with people right where they are. And I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Now let's go to Mike with his special guest, Michael Kelly Blanchard.
Yeah, welcome to the Mike Stone Show Music, Stories, and Conversations. I'm so honored today to welcome singer, songwriter, author, and storyteller Michael Kelly Blanchard. For more than 20 years, Michael has been touching hearts through music, stories, and stage productions that reflect the mercy and the grace of God. From beloved songs like Be Ye Glad to his books, plays, and albums, his work blends faith, creativity, and the human experience in a powerful way. Today we'll talk about his journey in music and ministry, the stories behind his songs, and the inspiration that continues to shape his life's work. My conversation with Michael Kelly Blanchard starts right now. Michael, welcome to the Mike Stone Show.
Oh, thank you, Mike. It's an honor to be here.
Well, by all accounts, you were raised in a family which values the arts. And how did that influence, maybe impact you as a person and your own personal journey in music?
That's a good question. My father came from Newfoundland, came from a large family, but he was the only one who sort of picked up music, taught himself how to play the violin, was a fiddle player par excellence. And so when we were growing up, one of the real treats was live music when Pop had it in his mind to play for us. And then as I learned the guitar, I accompanied him. My brother played the piano, and he'd accompany him as well. So we had just music just bouncing around all the time, and it was just wonderful. Along with that also was the fact that my mother was an English teacher, and her specialty was Shakespeare. I can't tell you it's my, the Bard is my specialty, but she had such a way of bringing about his creativity for us to understand what was really going down. So often with Shakespeare, you go, I don't know, what are you saying? Well, she had a way of bringing that about so you could begin to understand. Anyway, I was just blessed to have an English teacher for a mom and a fiddle player for dad.
So you grew up right there in Connecticut, around Unionville and the Farmington River, and that appears a lot in your memories, it seems. Did that landscape influence your writing and imagination?
Well, I think the answer is yes, although I'm very unaware of that. I'm not thinking of it, trying to bring it in. It just sort of seeps in. And I tend to think that's probably the best way things should happen in terms of creating. Not trying to write about something, it just is your environment, sort of like the air you breathe. So from a point of view, yes, all those this is a factory town, and so the river played a big part when, before electricity. But more than anything else, it's just a hard-working, blue-collar town where efforts of people gathered together to pull off every year and pull off every situation. We had a big flood in 1955. For an awful lot of people, that's a long time ago. It is for me, too, but I was there. And big snowstorms that people would rally together. So I think that all had an influence. Whether I thought about it when I was writing it, I don't know, but it all influenced for sure.
Well, besides playing with your father, sounds like a great time with the family, that playing the music. What were some of the first songs you remember hearing, or first music you remember hearing that made you think, man, I want to do this? Or was it always part of who Michael Kelly Blanchard is?
I'll tell you, Mike, one of the humorous stories, I guess, is the fact that from the get-go, when I started speaking, I had a deep voice. It was a little bit strange, even odd, and my folks would not be bashful in exploiting that deep voice. My father played the guitar as well as the fiddle, and so he'd pull out the guitar and he'd bring the boy out, and I was only about 5, 6 years old. Have him sing Froggy Went A-Courtin', and I would sing Froggy Went A-Courtin'. He did go in my pajamas, and they were, I guess I did all right. It's an easy gig to some degree. Everyone is quite enthused that the little boy is singing in front of them. But one time, and this is where the humor comes in, my sister, my younger sister, who was 4 years younger, and so crawling around, not really noticeable in some ways, crawled up at my feet, which was normal, as I was singing Froggy Went A-Courtin' or The Fox Went Out on a Chilly Night. Unbeknownst to me, pulled my pajamas down. So it was a strip show, unannounced and unplanned for. Still, I remember today, both embarrassed, but makes me laugh every time I think of it.
Yeah, you don't reenact that in your shows, I'm sure, at this point anymore.
No, there would be a much different reaction. There was a howling, believe me. And, we had neighbors over at that particular time, I remember. I was notorious for about a day. Yeah.
That's a funny story. Well, you grew up and got your education right there. I was in Unionville. And then let's move on to your college, Berklee College of Music. That's a very esteemed college of music there in Boston. Am I right?
I think so. I mean, there's lots of very esteemed schools in Boston and in the whole New England area, also in the Chicago area. It is known as being one of the paramount jazz schools, and that was helpful for me because I did not, in terms of playing the guitar, I didn't start playing it in a very sophisticated way or a very trained way. I just picked it up and figured out chords and got to be quite comfortable with it. But that won't hold much water when you go into music school. And so the only school I could get into and audition for was Berklee, because it was a jazz school, and a lot of jazz musicians didn't have necessarily reading down. Many of them did, but reading music and things of that sort. So it was a school I could get into, was the first plus of it. But it was a really fine school, and wonderful teachers taught me a great deal and sort of brought me up to speed in terms of my musical training. Didn't go the whole 4 years because I ran out of money, but it was my training in a very important way. It's sort of school, of course, is nothing more than a way that you learn the tools of your trade to go out and do what you do. And that's what Berklee College of Music did for me.
Did you start your songwriting before you reached Berklee, or did you start there in college? Or how about your songwriting? How did that? When did that take shape?
That really took shape in the end of my high school time, or the last year of high school. I was in a sort of a Peter, Paul, and Mary wannabe trio. The girl in it was blonde. That helped. I had dark hair, and so did the other guys, so we could sort of look like Peter, Paul, and Mary. But in any case, the first song I ever wrote, I lied about, because I wasn't sure anyone was going to like it. So I told the trio, the two other people, that I heard this great song on the radio. I wanted to see if they liked it, and they did. And so we put it into our repertoire and sang it around. We had quite a few gigs. And finally, at some point, when they were goshing and gollying over how great it was, and I felt confident enough not to be rejected, I said, oh, by the way, I wrote that. And that kind of springboards me into seeing that this could happen. I could write music and people would like it.
And your faith was always, from the very beginning, a very strong, big part of your songwriting, or did that come a little later?
It's sort of like we were talking about earlier about the influence of the area. It almost like breathing or air. I didn't think of, in terms of the faith, something other than what I'm doing, whether it was an overt song that talked about, for instance, in the Christian tradition, talked about Jesus, or talked about God in some way, overtly, or whether it was a song, dealing with the human condition, both delightful and sorrowful and painful and uplifting. I viewed them all as sort of fitting into the nature of the faith that I have and have. I see it as a kind of the honor of being human, that we've been honored. Again, this is my spin on it. We've been honored, our humanity has been honored by God becoming one of us. There's that song about 10 years ago, what if God was one of us, just a slob on the bus? And I've always resonated with that concept. I think that's so true, that our humanity is the best expression of what God looks like and happens throughout history. Honesty and brokenness fits into songwriting, sometimes overtly, sometimes not.
And I think that's what drew me, especially to your songs, is they're not typical, as you would say, maybe in the Christian vein songs, because you do bring humor. You bring so many things, heartbreak. You once said you write songs to express the joy and the longing and loss of the heart. I think that's what we're talking about. So which usually comes first when you're writing a song, the lyric, the melody, or the story? And, man, your stories, I guess that you experienced many of the stories that you had behind your songs, but did that come first, the lyric, the melody, or the story behind the song?
Great question, Mike. When I do songwriting workshops, that's one of the key elements that I try to bring out in the participants, is that most people who write songs know that they have a strong, of the two, one is stronger than the other. They either are lyric strong, their music they bring to the lyric, or their music strong and they try to bring the lyric to some strong song that they've written. The problem is that often if we lead with our strength, and when I say problem, it's not a deep problem, but when you lead with your strength, then you're left with the thing that's not as strong to try to catch up to the strong part. So I recommend in the workshops, they experiment with, if you know your strength, let's say in my case, my strength is the lyric. So my advice would be for me to write the melody first and bring my strength to that existing melody, but have the melody have all my energy at the first, instead of trying to bring a melody to an existing lyric. This, again, in my case, and it is, I feel, true, that the music part is not as strong for me as the written part. So that's my advice. Do I stick to my advice? No, not much. I'm afraid to say that I think it's stunning advice, and some of the best songs I've written have either been, I think you suggested in a question to me, they all happen at once. Well, the best songs sort of do. You mentioned Be Ye Glad. That was certainly the case. It was so quick to be realized, at least two verses of it. There's an interesting backstory there. I wrote two verses and liked the song a lot. I liked it as an anthem. Sent it off to my friend and real mentor, Noel Paul Stuckey, for him to hear it. I wanted to see what he thought. He liked it very much, but he said, it needs another lyric. And I sent him a first and a third lyric, and so I got to work, because I listened to what Noel Paul says to me and put the middle verse in to complete it. And once again, it didn't take very long. I often say with songs like Be Ye Glad and a few other ones, I'm the junior partner, definitely the junior partner to the senior partner who really contributed.
Yes. So you mentioned Noel Paul Stuckey. That would be from Peter, Paul, and Mary. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And I think you had a PBS special with him. I've seen that, I believe. And tell us about that, if you will.
Well, it's called There Is Love, and that is based on his song, The Wedding Song, which I just saw somewhere on the net that it's the most popular wedding song of the last 50 years. Whether we can believe that or not, who knows, but it certainly is a beloved song. And so he and I did along with my wife Greta and some other musicians, we did a special. PBS folks refer to it as a holiday special because we do some Christmas music to it. But it's really a special that we filmed in a church right here in Connecticut. It came together. There's a lot of backstory as to how it came together, but it was something we had sung before. Noel and I had sung together in different settings before and have certainly since, but it just was an opportunity to film it. PBS was excited to do it, so we did, and it really is a delightful show, particularly featuring some of Noel's humor, and he explains the kind of backstory, which is fascinating to me, of that song, The Wedding Song, a song he wrote for his colleague, Peter Yarrow.
How'd you come to meet Mr. Stuckey? How did that happen?
Well, it happened because, whereas when I was growing up, people had Paul McCartney and John Lennon and Elvis Presley as heroes that they'd love to meet someday. Mine was Paul of Peter, Paul, and Mary. I went to their concerts, bought my field glasses, could only afford the nosebleed seats, and would watch and study everything he did. He was a comic, he was a master guitarist, and a silver-throated singer, And he was what I wanted to be when I grew up. Vacationing up in Maine with another couple, got word that he had a studio up there close to where we were, and that he was not untouchable. He was very accessible. So I saw the studio in the phone book and called up, and he answered the phone. You know, I didn't know what to say. I was so enamored of him. I think he could sort of sense that because I was stuttering and just gasping. And he said, well, we're working on a thing. Come on over if you're in the area, and I'll show you stuff. And that's exactly how I met him. And he was just that affable and wanting to help. And we recorded, I think about a year after that, we recorded one of our first albums called Quail up there with him. A few years after that, recorded one song from another album called Love Lives On, the song Be Ye Glad, which I've already mentioned, and he sang on that as well. So through the years now, he has been a dear friend, someone who I admire and is a real influence in my writing and also my performing.
So you were a big fan of folk music, and a fan of what other kind of music did you listen to during that time? Who were some of your biggest artists, or your favorite artists, I should say?
Well, in the folk time, listened a lot. Clancy Brothers, Joan Baez, Judy Collins. Again, listened a lot to Peter, Paul, and Mary. So those were the artists who I was really drawn to. I'm sure there's more. And Dylan. I don't think there's any question. Almost anyone who was writing at that time was influenced by him as well. The other strong influence is Celtic. I remember being in Ireland once and walking down Grafton Street, which is sort of the walking street in Dublin, and someone, a photo crew or a news crew from the local television station, pulled me aside and wanted my opinion as a common Irishman. I apparently looked it, and when I opened my mouth, I kind of started talking in a lilt, easily. At least it fooled them. So I think the Irish influence is strong in me, the Celtic influence. You can probably hear it in some of the songs, probably more the last couple albums than the front couple, but classical is also a big part to me, particularly in the classical world, the neo-romantics of the 20th century, Samuel Barber, Aaron Copland, Rafe Vaughan Williams, very melodic, but very different in their tonalities and in their harmonic structures.
Music has always been so important to you and way to express yourself, which you do very well. The album Love Lives On, what was the inspiration for creation of that particular album?
You know, Mike, that was a long time ago. When you put it in perspective, I think it came out in 46 years ago. In any case, I mean, I hope I can remember much, except to say that we had on the cover this little child who was adopted, and his parent allowed her to play as we were having a camera shoot for the album cover, and she stole the show. She was up on a little ancient tool, like a some sort of farmer's tool, and she was just playing on that, but captured the whole import of that song. There is a little girl playing in someone's backyard, and basically it's talking about the fact that even though in a age that was then, is now, no indication it won't be in the future, terribly broken, terribly ruinous for human love, in its wonderful, tender, simple little way, lives on. And that was the theme. Several different songs. There's one called Claire on that album that deals with a man with a daughter lamenting her mother who had passed away, but trying to explain maybe to her, spirit, that you should see Dad now. Dad had been, overbearing and hard and rough in emotional ways, but now he's a mess because he misses you, and you were so much a part of who he was and what he needed. That is going to be the theme for me again and again and again, that things are very tough in the human household, but love is stronger than that, survives and touches and moves and transforms.
I believe that theme, Michael, runs through almost everything that you do, even though we're broken humans and we all fall way short of the mark.
Yes.
But love does live on in the face of the cross and the sacrifice, and you portray that so well in a lot of ways, and that's why when I'm listening to your music, I can relate. So when I think the people who listen to your music, a lot of them, and they relate to the pain, they relate to the brokenness, they relate to the hurt, and we'll talk about, if you don't mind, just a few of those songs a little bit later on. But you really, I don't know if you've experienced that much pain in your life or hurt or brokenness. I think we all do, but you certainly reflect that in such an artistic and a way that I can really comes to grips and helps me to see clearly what is really important and strive to bring that love as much as I can.
You know, the nature of our failings is wrapped up in this, Mike, as well. I mean, I grew up in an Irish Catholic home, and so the joke is always, you know, the guilt factor is big. You know, Catholics sort of major in guilt, and that, you know, we had things that I think were important, certainly important for me, in terms of the church having confession where you could confess your sins, and I think that's all very important. One of the things that's been so actually liberating for me in the latter part, the sort of second half of my life, I'm 77 now, and for several years now, has been a rephrasing of the word sin. It holds up for me in so many of the broken stories that I try to express, is missing the mark. That's what sin is. It missed. It didn't hit the mark, which is a lot of interpretations of that. But I think it is so apt to so many of the broken-hearted situations, people who, for all sorts of reasons, missed the mark and continue to miss the mark. Is there a hope to change? Of course there is. But there is forgiveness again and again and again. The idea, I just was reading it the other day, I think it's in the Gospel of Matthew, where Peter says, how many times should I forgive? 7 times? And Jesus says 70 times 7, implying again and again and again.
Yeah, I think one of your songs that so reflect that, and like I say, it's a theme really throughout most all of your music, but the song, I Love You, I Do, You Bet, man, that reflects so much about forgiveness. It helped me so much to say, you know, you just got to forgive, and of course, family and your close acquaintances. You just got to forgive, just as you state in that song. And can you say just a little bit about "I Love You, I Do, I Bet"? Or you bet?
It uses a experience I had. The first verse does. When I was a little kid, I was told I had to go to Saturday school. It was a church-related thing on Saturday mornings at the local elementary school where I was going to school. I had to go back on Saturday, if you can imagine. What a bummer for a little kid. A perfectly good Saturday morning where I could be out in the woods playing, and I had to go to Saturday school. And on the way, the only element that kind of made it tolerable is that I could scoot into the Five and Dime and check out all the things that I didn't have money to buy before going to the school in the other part of town. Well, in there was a little green car I saw in a bin. The green car was out of place there. And I thought, my goodness, no one's going to miss this green car because it's already in a different spot. I didn't particularly need or want or think anything other than, there it is, no one will notice, and boink, it ended up in my pocket, and boink, I ended up out on the sidewalk heading to Sunday school, or to Saturday school. Now, I'll just give you a tip here, Mike. If you're going to start a life of crime, don't do it. You're heading off to religion class. We had a very, shall we say, substitute that morning. the morning I stole the little green car, she was merciless about people who broke one of the 10 Commandments. So that car was just burning a hole in my pocket. There seemed to be no forgiveness whatsoever. I slunk home hoping I wouldn't be hit by a car. And my brother finally blew the whistle on me. I'd been whimpering up in my room all Saturday afternoon. My mother came up and said, "What's up?" And I wouldn't tell her. And she said, "Okay, look, here's the deal. I'm going to say the word chat. When I say the word chat, you tell me what you did and leave nothing out. Tell me everything you did. That's the rule. And I promise I won't get mad." My mother had a real strong anger boiling over point. And so that was a big promise if she said she wouldn't get mad. So I, boo-hooing, pulled the pillow back, and there was the green car. And she forgave me. I didn't know that she would, but she did, and she didn't get mad. Well, that ends up being the first verse of I Love You, I Do You Bet. It basically set the stage for the next verses of if my mother does that, how much more God will do that to us, will do that for us. That, once again, we missed the mark. I shouldn't have stole the car. But his love, the love of God, is so complete that no matter what, I love you, I do, he says, God says, you bet.
You know, I think so many people need to hear that, Michael. There's so much guilt built up. Of course, I was a sheriff here for 44 years and seen that play out many times, that people cannot forgive themselves. They get into a hole and they try to remedy that with all kinds of whatever they may be getting into. But I think they so need to hear what you just said about the forgiveness and the grace and the mercy that is there, and so prevalent in your music and what draws me to that. So thank you, my friend, for bringing that to us. I believe you had a lot of inspiration to do that.
The writing of songs isn't, at least for me, is an intimate affair. I don't write it in group. It isn't a kind of a group think that comes up with the song, at least not for me. Very intimate, very individualized in my head and in my heart. So when that intimacy can be expressed in a way to many others, it's beyond honoring, Mike. It is such a true, wonderful gift that God has given to me, undeserving, to be able to take that intimate little story and have it meet more than just me, but others.
Is that why you like to go to maybe some of the smaller venues and make it real personal? And it does when you have smaller venues, and I think that's where a lot of, I know you played probably bigger venues, but how do you choose? I hope you're still doing some of that. So how about your concerts in the intimate and the smaller venues? How did that come about, and are you still doing that?
Yes, certainly in your area. You mentioned our friends, the Fletchers. Ken has booked a lot of what is called house concerts, which is a delightful concept because it's so kind of interactive and able to kind of have its own breathing. You know, in a standard concert, lights go down, like the spotlight hits the mic, you come out from the side stage, and it's you and them, and you try to break that down a little bit, but it's pretty separate as the evening goes. But at a house concert, none of that. You know, people come over with a plate of cookies, and so the story songs particularly have an opportunity to springboard into stories that people will say as they're sitting on the couch. You know, oh, that reminds me of, I have one song called Tippy about the dog I grew up with. Oh, my goodness, that just exploded. Oh, my dog, you know. And not only does it, people talk a lot, but all of a sudden the water starts to flow, particularly with dogs. It's amazing. They are the agents, I think, and you can quote me, they are many times the agent of God to get to our hearts. A dog, you yell at the dog, and he'll come right back and love you and lick your hand again and again. You know, he doesn't know why you yelled, or maybe he does, but he loves you anyway. And he loves you anyway, loves you anyway. Boy, that sounds like God to me. So from a point of view of the house concert, you can pick up on people's experience in a really lovely way and have them be part of the whole concert. So yes, I do love those. I'm presently doing a thing called That Takes Me Back, which is with a retired hospital chaplain, where we are doing senior homes and churches, where basically it's a 2-hour event where we sort of use my story songs and the songs that kind of bring to mind things humorous, sometimes sad, all the time human, get people into what's called story pods, kind of a way in which people can really participate their story into the overall 2 hours of story. It's been very successful and very honoring to do. You look up and 2 hours has gone by in a blink because people love to tell their story. And what it turns out is they love to hear other people's stories too. And, we have a few rules so someone doesn't dominate too much, but at the end of the day, we've done a lot of nurses conferences and caregiver conferences, and they all look up and say, I never knew that about that person, because there wasn't the opportunity to tell their story. It's what humans long to do. So in terms of these days, that's more what I've been doing.
The name of that again is what, Michael?
That Takes Me Back. And, of course, it's kind of a quote. We've said it all. It's been said in bars and libraries and places where people meet. All of a sudden somebody will mention something or they'll hear a song and they'll go, oh, that takes me back. Well, that's the title, and that's the goal. What it does, Mike, more than almost anything else, is build community. We do it in churches, but also mostly in senior facilities as an opportunity you may be sitting down eating with this person for the last 2 years, but in this, there's a kind of a prodding to tell a story. You find out things you just never knew, laughs you never thought someone else felt the same way, so it's honoring.
Such a great idea, and everybody, I keep on telling that on my little show, everybody has a story. And when I would go into people's houses, as I had to do sometimes, I would look at their pictures, I would engage with the family, because you learn a lot by looking at the pictures on the wall and finding out exactly what this person is about. They have a story, and they would love to share it, but oftentimes people don't go there. But this is an avenue where they can.
Absolutely.
If someone wants to bring that, and I'm going to be talking to our folks here, I don't know if you want to share how they could get in touch, maybe on your Facebook page or some way to get that production and get that event to their particular place.
It's on our website. So just put my 3 names into Google and Google my 3 names. The website will come up. And if you go to the home page, there's a reference to it. Or look for retreats tab, wide open to other places to do it. So, yeah, be happy to and the phone number is there, too. So basically anyone who would like to find out more, they feel free to call.
Great.
And if I get them, I'll call them back.
Do you have a song that best captures your heart as a songwriter? And I had a few songs that particular favorites of mine, but I'll let you tell me first about maybe one that captures your heart as a songwriter.
Almost might have to split it into 2 segments because we talked about the influence of faith, and there is a song that probably represents, or I think articulates, better thoughts that I have in terms of faith. We could go in that direction, or there could be the ones that are the most revealing of the human condition.
Come to understand about your art and your music is you take people through all the emotions. I mean, you'd be laughing at one song, such a humorous song, and then the next minute you'll be grabbing your towel. But some of my favorites would be like, I think you had a couple about Danny's Downs or Daniel Downs. I'd like to know the inspiration behind that, maybe.
That's a good place to go, Mike, because there are 2. There's a sequel. Daniel Downs is the sequel to Danny's Downs. And it's basically dealing with, the joy of a pregnancy, discovering that the child is born with a condition called Down syndrome. It's a chromosome element. We break down the science of it. Child has health issues almost from the get-go, or can, and there is limitations, intellectual limitations. And so it basically, that song, the first one, Danny's Down, delves into the family unexpectedly dealing with what they were not expecting. And the kind of arc of how it went, there was, of course, a sense of disappointment. When I say of course, is because they had built in their heads one idea of what it would be to have a child. And dealing with that, the mom dealing with that, father dealing with that. And in the midst of it comes an unlikely, but oh so likely, and so loving angel, shall we say, in a Jamaican woman who is there in her job in the hospital, and she speaks truth to the mom. There were back then options that were, I guess they probably could still be today in some places, but she speaks truth, and she says, take that boy home with you. They do. And in doing that, the child transforms the home. I remember Hubert Humphrey, the senator from Minnesota, talk about one of his children had a child with Down syndrome, and he gave the most impassioned talk I ever heard from him or from most senators about how transformed their home. And he meant, he is a grandparent, and his child, his parents, was transformed by this little gift from God. That's what the song Danny's Downs deals with, the idea that this woman from Jamaica just speaks truth to the mom, and they keep the child, and their lives are transformed. And the sequel is that now the child is an adult, works in a grocery store, and is still transforming lives. It's God speaking and living through this child. It's the truth of how God works. It isn't flash. It isn't power of, munitions. No, it's the beauty of a child that the world might say, but God knows, we know, humans recognize. This is truth. This is truth in the checkout line. How wonderful. How beautiful. The second song is, both songs are to some degree based on experiences for me, not our children, but we're godparents to a boy, and other circumstances. But in the second song, there is a man that we know who we've seen him since he was a young boy. He works in a local grocery store, and honest Indian, the idea of the lines sort of back up, wanting him to be the one who is filling the bags after paying for the food, because his smile could melt you, and his greeting. Wouldn't you want to be greeted that way in any given day as you sort of plod along, that all of a sudden somebody has a smile and he knows you might get a hug too. There to me is the essence of the truth of God through who we are in our humanity.
Such a beautiful story, just an amazing song, and very, very touching, I would say. Let me move on to one a little more humorous here. And my family's a lot of family of baseball. I don't know if you're a fan. I think you're a fan of baseball. You're right there in Connecticut. My brother played professional baseball with the Mets, and in 1973. Your song, "It'll All Come Back," that is just a wonderful song, and I've sent that to my grandchildren who love ball. Now, that's a great song, and a uplifting song, and a song of encouragement to somebody who may say, I'm not quite as good, but it'll all come back.
That's one of the key songs we do in this program that takes me back. In fact, we have a promo that I sing a portion of that particular song to promote that program that we do that takes me back. And it's almost true, Mike. I won't say it's perfectly true. I don't think they had trouble finding the ball that I hit, but it was a case of my father coming to and I was a terrible hitter, and he had instructed me many times how to hit, but it wasn't very good. But that day, for grace reasons, I'm sure, I hit a double. My goodness. Couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it today. But it also, as you allude, and as my kids would say, but Dad, you tell a good story, Dad, and then you have a sad thing at the end, or the guy dies or something. Why do you do that? The
Hey, no doubt, and it will all come back. That's a deeper message, but you proceed that so well with your baseball story. But another one that I love so particularly because I can relate to this. We have a drive-in about 4 miles from our house. We did have a drive-in. They're no longer there. But that song about the drive-in, that's a father's love, picking you up and taking you in the house. And you, well, I'll let you expound on the song about the drive-in.
Well, I'll tell you something, Mike. One of the things now, I have another song called Snow Day, dealing with snow days, and drive-in. There are historical documents now. There are no drive-ins around, at least up here. So in doing it, I have to, many times I look out at the crowd and go, oh, okay, we used to have a thing called drive-in, and explain it, because to whole generations, they don't know what I'm talking about, or they vaguely know what I'm talking about. But it was the idea that you all piled in the car. We were a family of 4, all piled in the car with your popcorn and your Kool-Aid, because my father would not have us spend money, any more money than we did to get in. Would not have us go to a high-priced soda bar in between the movies. But it was still a thrill to be there. And as you point out, and as the song points out, our stamina kind of fades. This particular case, it faded because it was a movie we could care less about. Men and women kissing. And so finally nosediving. And whether we were asleep or not, we sure looked asleep in the hopes that the father would pick us up and carry us in.
Beautiful story. Another story, the story about Marty. Everybody knows a Marty. I thought that was done so well. I'd like for you to tell us a little bit of how that came about, the song Marty. I think that's the name of it.
We have another song called Tommy and Marty, and that's actually a thinly disguised discussion between Thomas Aquinas and Martin Luther. But that's another whole topic. So back to Marty. Marty was, most of us guys, and I think many women as well, had some friend that they were drawn to, but they were dangerous. They traveled in much riskier circumstances than at least I did with my friend Marty. And Marty, actually, I'll tell you, Mike, is a composite of maybe 3 different guys throughout junior high and high school that I hung out with. But he all zeroed into one just to make the song more understandable. And basically, I think the story, Marty, is a great story about the sacrifice. At the center, I think, of the Christian faith is sacrifice. And at the center of this song is the kid that everyone thought would be the one who would got in trouble, of course, and who is announced over the loudspeaker in the morning, well, Marty, please come to the office. He was the guilty one, always assumed to be guilty. And so when field trip is put off or threatened to be canceled because someone stole the test, whoever it was who stole it did not fess up. But Marty, looking at the room, realized there'll be no question if I stand up and go to the teacher's desk that she'll think I did it. And so he does. He sacrifices. To me, that is the essence of sacrifice, of the humanity of our hearts. The song talks about spotting hearts years later and remembering Marty and his heart. And, of course, the tragedy of that song is they're practicing for graduation, and he didn't pass. The teacher who had it in for him pulls him out of class, and pulls him out of line in front of everyone and says, you're not going to graduate. I've often thought of that scene from that movie years ago that Paul Newman did, Cool Hand Luke, where he's in a road gang. Guy who's overseeing the whole thing beats him down to the point where he just cried in front of everyone, and that's what happened to Marty.
Hear that song, and the Martys of the world, my heart just goes out, and man, I get a little tear in my eye when I hear that song, because I'm so empathetic with Marty's situation, and then to stand up and take the sacrifice so other people could go on the trip. Quite a deal. Just a couple of more here. I love this one because the mighty breath of God, because, man, we're dancing with Jesus. I don't know if my Baptist folks would quite understand that, but I relate to that so well. I mean, come on and dance with me. And that's a jig, sort of an Irish jig, but a beautiful song, and I just love the way it's done.
We had a lot of fun recording it. That's one of the albums I did in Nashville, and they have the premier musicians called up by the company. Just so much fun to bring that life. I mean, the song was written without the fiddle, but boy, the fiddle just makes that tune. It is a dancing tune. There's no question I don't have as many joyous tunes as I do kind of heartbreaking ones. But the joyous ones, I'm glad that they're, because that's part of the whole picture too. So much part of the picture. When I think of my father playing the fiddle and my sister dancing in the floor as Pop played it, that's a little glimmer of heaven.
No doubt. I just believe that's, hey, come and dance with me. In other words, I love you, and we want a relationship, and let's just have a dance. That's just impactful. It means a lot. Just a couple more. This one may be one on the sad side. The view out the window where the mother is dying, and she tells the daughter who is there, she's grieving, and a view out the window is only a very small part of the whole view. You can watch the geese go by, but you can hear them, but you can't see them.
That's kind of a major piece for me. Of course, did it in actually three parts. So that there's the first telling the story of the ailing mother, and then I had a chance to pull out my string writing chops, which I studied at Berkeley for, and I was so honored to do that. And then to have Cynthia Clausen, who's just one of the most beautiful voices around, to sing Bereft, the lament of the child, the lament of the mom having to go, and then the child in the reprise, child being now a mother herself, and feeling that tremor of fear about, oh my gosh, remembering long before it seemed like it should happen, her mother got sick, and so she's worrying herself, and the mother gave her the clues: see the wind in the trees, that'll be my answer, that all will be well. To me, when completed, and then also having quality of musicians, oh my gosh. Cynthia starts it off, but cello players, the violin players, violas, it was nothing but wonderful. Honored that it got captured. If you hang in there, I think it's what...
Beautifully done. Well, my last one here that is my personal favorite, and maybe your biggest song is probably international, is Daddy Cuts My Hair. That song has been so impactful for so many people, and I tell you, on my personal level, every time I hear it, I get a tear in my eye. How did that song come about, Michael? It's a beautiful song.
Well, I think the nature of writing is tap into that which is real, that which is true. You can't go wrong there, and don't worry about even the story as long as you're tapping in. And so my father gave us haircuts. That was just the way it was. Now, we didn't have a falling out that the song talks about, but there was that closeness. And men, I think you'll affirm this, have a hard time sometimes expressing what they feel. And so one of the sweet things about a haircut is you can't cut from a distance. You got to get in close. And so all the other senses kick in, smell of coffee on the breath and the touch, and just the closeness that doesn't happen normally. And so the song is dealing with just that. And the arc, when I do songwriting clinics, I talk about one of the things that I'm most interested in a story song is a full circle. It's kind of bringing it around. So the song starts out in a haircut and then has a haircut happening as the man is serving in Vietnam and he's cutting hair for his friend. And then the father who cut the hair in the first verse is now to some degree an invalid via a stroke. And so there's no speech. But once again, it's that full circle of the haircut being the place in which all this takes place and happens. And the fact that regardless of all the events, that we're just too precious not to forgive each other. I mean, it's too beautiful. Humans are too beautiful, too dear to just reject it, walk away from. And so that the song realizes that there's been a reconciliation even after the mother has died without a reconciliation. She hasn't seen it. And with all the heartbreak that has transpired because of the difficulties and the conflicts, at the end, even without speaking, love has won. Love, lives on, regardless.
I would say, Michael, that song probably has caused a lot of people reuniting with their family members, I would think, because you hear that, you can't help but say, maybe I need to call somebody today that I haven't talked to or have had a estranged relationship with. I think that song, more than you ever realize, probably has brought families back and relationships back together in a powerful, powerful way. And I know you did that with the Gaithers. Still find that on YouTube with you playing with the Gaither family. They all sit around and you came in and played that song. I don't think there was a dry eye in that entire building when you got through with that song.
No, it was a deeply emotional time. There were several encounters, Mike, after that from just individual people who were in that crowd who told me then their specific story, or just little snippets, or just the fact that, could barely get it out, but, I miss my dad, or whatever. So, yeah, honored and so grateful to Bill and Gloria. That song was done the way it should be done. All the post-production to make it as impacting as it was. So grateful to them and grateful to have that opportunity. May it just do exactly what you said, Mike, is to help reconciliation.
I just want to briefly say your wife, Greta, I know she's been a part of your journey for decades, and I know you'll have some children, and I'm sure that partnership has influenced your music and about everything else that goes on with your concerts, everything else that you do with your art.
Yeah, 52 years and counting. Interestingly enough, she's just in raw talent. I think she's got a better ear than I do musically. I wouldn't doubt that she has perfect pitch. She has a tremendous sense of pitch and things on tune and off tune. But she has also a great sense of how to present the harmony just in the right way, to fit it right where it should be. So, yeah, you're right. That's just the tip of the iceberg of her influence on me, and also the effect that she's had on all the aspects, our children, and many other people. She's been a teacher. She's retired now, but for many, many years. And, a week doesn't go by without someone who's commenting about how important her teaching was to them. So
great partnership in life and with your music career as well. So more than 50 years of songwriting. You still got the creative juices flowing and still pick up the guitar, piano, or write out a tune?
Well, I was afraid you were going to ask that. I'm writing poetry to some degree, but even that performing thing pretty much took a nosedive with COVID, shut travel down, deservedly so. I mean, there's no point in being out there, and I didn't want any gathering, to be at risk. So it really shut down, but for whatever reason, it isn't at that kind of stage. I'm at the stage now of listening, and I think it's an important thing. I listen a lot, not to music, but to just the whole pulse of things, the age, humans around me. But in terms of the actual writing of songs, that hasn't happened much in the last bunch of years. One of my favorite writers, C.S. Lewis, talked about with friends. It was near the end of his life. I'm not projecting that this is a similarity here, but near the end of his life, he said, he told a friend, the pictures are gone. Now, if you knew something about Lewis, in several instances talked about his creativity started almost always with a visual picture that he had in his head. For instance, if you're familiar with the Narnia Chronicles.
Yes,
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the children go through a wardrobe, and the first thing they see, or the first thing Lucy sees, is a lamppost in the woods on with the snow coming down. That's the first thing she sees. Well, that, Lewis said, was the very first thought he had about the Narnia Chronicles. He got a picture of a lamppost in the woods and snow coming down. That's it. And he told his friend a couple of years before he passed away, he said, the pictures are gone. I don't get pictures anymore. I'm not saying that's my case, but I am saying I can relate the idea of something just sort of popping into your head and looking for a scrap of paper to get it down. That still happens, but doesn't happen much like it used to. So who knows?
Chapters of life and the seasons of life, as we turn the page, things do change. So we're going to, just a couple of more here, if you don't mind. What advice would you give some young songwriters maybe who are starting out? And I know songwriting now and the way production is and the digital world and, man, music has changed a lot, the professional business side of music. And I know that's something we hadn't talked about, but I think you probably have not been in that lane where you, and even in some of your songs, you talk about not searching for the glory, the pride, and the fame.
was certainly guilty of it. You know, you mentioned what was my favorite song. One of my absolute favorites, I'll just throw it out there, is called North of Leven. It's off the Good Grief album. It's the last cut on that album. And it really is very personal, because I can't deny the fact that when Nashville rang me up, I wasn't flattered and, in fact, hungry and sort of unloving many times of getting what I was hoping would come. And the truth of it is, it never really happened, and that's fine. I've come to sort of realize that it was more of a blessing than a disappointment. That really large fame, any sort of exposure on the bigger stage, it really hasn't happened. My situation has been blessed to be really under the radar. I'm honored, happy that I can go to my grave knowing that that was absolutely okay. In fact, it was more than okay. It probably was the quiet blessing I never really appreciated about my life, because I don't know, you know, when I talk about sin being missing the mark, I think I probably would have missed the mark pretty big time had it become a, you know, household name and all that thing. So I am honored to be just who I am and discovering that more. And, you know, not with anything to prove at all. Just happy, as some writers once said, happy to be here.
I think that's what drawn a lot of people to your music, is that's not what you are. And I think people who are drawn to your music just appreciate the fact that, hey, here I am. Here's my heart. Here's my songs. Here's my stories. And if you like them, come join along. And if you don't, that's okay too.
I remember sitting with a friend at it's a big church in Chicago. I can't think of the name of Willowbrook or Willow something. Anyway, big church. They had something like 7,000 attendees, and they had the weekends where strangers would come because it was an event and they had drama and so forth. But during the week, they had their own congregation, which was about 4,000 people. So I'm sitting there with a friend in a hall full of people, and I'm thinking, how in the world does a church this size pray for each other individually? And the end was almost the answer forthcoming. A woman came up to the microphone and said, now we're going to pray for one another. And so she had a list of 10 things that if you were going through, you should stand up, and the rest of the congregation would pray for them. And so the first one was having marital problems. Well, the whole place went up. You know, having financial problems. The whole place went up. Having other problems. The whole place went up. Number 6, she said, are you brokenhearted? Not many people. And I don't hear audible things from God, but I'll tell you, it was almost audible. I heard, there they are. There's your people, the brokenhearted.
That says it all right there. Well, let's finish off with a question that I want to know answer to. And when people listen to your music years from now, what do you hope they remember about Michael Kelly Blanchard? I know what I will remember, but what do you hope they remember?
I'll answer you theologically first. Theologically, I hope they don't remember me at all. They remember the essence of whatever they felt, that their heart was stirred. Humanly, it's very touching, and I have enough people who have written, you know, almost every month, one person will write or two people will write, will say, I remember, you know, in 82 when you played here or so forth, and that influenced my life, and that touches me. You know, I could ask for no more, and I mean it. But from a point of view, what they remember, you really have to take the Baptist legacy, and he says, I should decrease, and he would increase. And I saw that perfectly seen a million years ago, it seems, when I went to see Mahalia Jackson at a theater hall in Hartford. Greta and I went. She did a wonderful performance, pretty short. She wasn't well, but it was her voice was wonderful. And I didn't know it was the last song because it didn't seem like she had been out there that long. She had us all singing, and she invited us to close our eyes and kind of rock with the music. It was just wonderful. And she would lead us, and we sang, and lead us and sang. And all of a sudden, she wasn't leading us, but we were still singing. And And then we looked up and she was gone. She hit the stage. Nobody knew because their eyes were shut and they were just rocking with the music. She got small that he might increase. That's the goal.
Very, very well said. Well, I think I will remember mostly about your music is the humanity that we have, the brokenness, then the love, mercy, forgiveness that is there, reaching out and saying, I just want to have a relationship with you, brother, sister. That's all. I think your songs reflect every one of those. Very, very important to all humans. Grace, mercy, forgiveness. And we so need that in this world today. And Michael Kelly Blanchard, you have given that to the world. And I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you taking the time to go through all this. Blessings on your endeavors to keep on at it. You've served for all those many years the public, and now you're serving them in a new way. Right? That's honoring.
There you go, Grace, again, and saying, hey, you're not done with yet, Mike. Maybe you ought to try this. So I'm blessed, yeah. But I also realize the other part of the coin is we need to be helpful to other people. Well, thank you so much. Anything else, closing words you'd like to have? I'll let you have the last word.
Farther up and farther in was the line from one of the Narnia tales of going deeper into the heart of God. So may it be so.
Thanks so much, Michael. And you have a great day and the rest of your week. And keep on going, brother.
Thank you, Mike.
You've been listening to The Mike Stone Show, music, stories, and conversations. What a privilege it's been to spend this time with Michael Kelly Blanchard, an artist whose music and message continue to resonate across generations. I hope today's conversation gave you something to think about, something to feel, and maybe even something to carry with you into your own story. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it, follow the podcast, and check out more conversations just like this one, because the best stories are the ones that bring us closer together. Until next time, I'm Mark for The Mike Stone Show. Thanks for listening, and remember to keep the music playing and the conversations going.